Minority Incorporated. You are at the Red Table Talk. We couldn't be more excited. Y'all see all of the ladies here. It's going to be great energy tonight. Welcome to our Red Table Talk. Where do we go from here? This is a social action event and a part of our May Week 2025. We have tons of activities that are happening during May Week, but this one today is a special critical conversation that we're going to have. I am the chapter president of the Indianapolis Alumni Chapter, Dr. Q Russell, and I am super excited. We have special guests. Of course, we have our social action co-chair. You'll hear more from everyone. So we want you to dial in. Make sure if you have questions, you drop them down in the chat. And you stay connected. This is going to be a great conversation. We'll have a good time today, right, ladies?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's turn this over to our chair, Dr. Emily, to talk a little bit more about what you can expect for our special guest.
All right. Well, we are happy to be here. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Source, can you hear me?
To go from here. Now, this isn't just going to be a panel. It's a space for real talk. We're gathered here to have open, honest, and urgent conversation around social action, civic responsibility, and the impacts of local elections on our communities.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to be joined by two powerful elected officials who lead with clarity, purpose, and heart. Right. They are not just here to speak. They're here to engage. Listen, I give you all of us. But first, let me give you a disclaimer. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse one political party or a specific set of political beliefs. And so now that we got that straightened out the way, I want to introduce our panelists and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we will get into it. And so to my left, we have Representative Cherish Pryor, and to my right, on the other side of Dr. Q, we have Myla Eldridge. And so I want to give them the opportunity to just say a few words, introduce yourself. Your bios were long, and I was like, they can give themselves justice.
Yeah.
So you can tell the audience who you are and what you want them to know about you.
Okay, well, thank you all first for inviting me to be a part of this table talk. I'm excited about it. And thank you all for joining as well. As mentioned, I'm State Representative Cherish Pryor, and I'm really, really, really excited because this is actually my district.
Oh, yay!
So I'm excited about that. I represent District 94, which is the northwest side of Indianapolis, parts of Pike and Washington Township. And I've been in the legislature since 2008. I'm currently the Democratic floor leader. So we have 3 leadership positions that are elected, and I'm the second person in leadership. So I'm excited about that. I'm also the national treasurer for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators.
Okay.
We have about 700 African-American legislators across the country.
Wow.
And so this is my 5th year of being the treasurer for the organization. Nice. So I'm really excited about that. I also serve on the Elections and Apportionment Committee, Utilities, Technology, and Communications Committee, and then the Ways and Means Committee. And that committee...
When you have time to get here? Because that's a lot of work. You have time to get here.
Yeah, so we're not in session.
I was like...
We're not in session right now.
Correct.
I can talk about this. So we're not in session right now. But there's long titles, but there's 3 committees.
Okay. Yes.
So it's 3 committees, but they're very time-consuming committees, especially Ways and Means. So I'll just leave it there unless you want me to say more, because I can talk about it.
We got time. We're gonna hear some more.
Good evening, everyone. I too thank you very much for allowing me to be at the red table this evening. I am Myla Eldridge. I have the privilege of serving as the Marion County Auditor currently, and also as the Democratic Chairwoman for the Marion County Democratic Party. I was actually elected 16 years ago, I think it was. My time flies. To serve as your first African American clerk in Marion County ever. And so I'm just a voter. I'm just a voter. I'm just an African American woman that has a heart that cares about what happens to people. That's it.
With a lot of information though. That's right here. Listen.
We have a lot of years of experience at this table, y'all. So I'm gonna echo what Madam President said, please put your questions in the chat because we'll have a time to be able to come back to that. But I want to start you off with an opening question. So how would you describe the current political climate, especially as it relates to the communities that we serve right now? And what are the biggest concerns that you're hearing from constituents?
How would I characterize it? I think that there's a lot of concern from people right now, particularly because of what's happening at the federal level. They see and they hear all the cuts.
Yes.
And even as I go to church, some of my church members who are going to be losing their jobs because of what's happening at the federal level. And people don't think about that sometimes. Whatever happens federally, particularly what's happening now, is trickling down to the state and the local level. So I'm hearing a lot of concern from people who are concerned about how they're going to pay their bills if they lose their jobs. So, so that aside a little bit, but when you get into the political climate as it relates to the partisanship, I think it's gotten quite negative, quite frankly, and to some extent, for some people, toxic, I think. And so for our community, because we bear the brunt of a lot of that, and seeing some of that, the anti-DEI, the 3/5 compromise comment that was made, the legislation to take ethnic teaching out of schools. So for our community, it's really even more impactful. So I'm really concerned about those type of things that are affecting our community, but then it affects the entire community as well, in general as well. But when other communities get a cold, we catch the flu. We have to think about that.
Good one. Yes. Absolutely.
So I know this is you had
no,
questions.
come on, because I know you got to follow up.
I know you have
follow up
questions.
Go ahead.
This is the Red Table Talk,
yes.
Critical Conversations, and she started off and said real, so we're getting ready to get real.
Come on.
You mentioned the 3/5 comment, and some people don't know what that is, right? Yes. So we want to make sure that our viewers understand what that is, and it is a very important conversation, but it's a reason why many people are disenfranchised, that they feel like it's whatever, and you said even the word toxic. So can you speak to that 3/5 comment just a little bit to give some narrative and clarity for that?
So 3/5 compromise was used by, one of my colleagues of the Black Caucus. There are 16 African-American legislators, and one of them mentioned 3/5 compromise in the conversations about the anti-DEI bill. The lieutenant governor decided that night to make a video and talked about how great it was that we African Americans were counted as 3/5, and essentially saying that led to the ending of slavery. Slavery ended 78 years after that. So, what it ended, it definitely wasn't slavery. And so that has really got a lot of our community upset.
Yes.
And it was doubled down by our lieutenant governor. And I shouldn't say, I'll say our lieutenant governor because I'll be respectful of the office. But it doubled down on that comment, and then to add insult to injury, started attacking the Black churches. Because it making incorrect and false statements about the Black churches. And so when I say it's toxic, is that type of mindset that we have from the second highest person in office in the state of Indiana, who is spewing that negativity and that hatefulness for things that are untrue. And so that type of mindset, it only creates an environment that's toxic for the people who have oftentimes and who are still feeling the disparities, whether it's healthcare, criminal justice, financial management, all of those things, our community is negatively impacted by that. And those types of comments only opens the door for people who also feel like that. It gives them a pass and it gives them okay to think it's something that's true and we can continue to do that.
Well, and it also speaks to the lack of education, right? When we talk about why education and education about history is critical and like true education, it's because we need you to be knowledgeable so that you can hear when there is misinformation or information that is disparaging or degrading. Like, if we needed a commercial for why education is important and why history is important and why erasure is actually critical in our communities, we have
And
one.
cultural competence.
Cultural competence.
Ethnic studies.
absolutely.
Ethnic studies.
That's the whole thing,
Absolutely. So I want you to chime in, weigh in on this.
So what I've been hearing from voters is that voters are angry, upset, sad, disappointed, all the above from the presidential election, which has led into every state, right, that was impacted by, I'll say, Donald Trump getting elected. Because what happens is, what he is doing is trickling down to the states where we have Republican governors, right? And so until we get involved in our local elections, if you will, we're gonna have, major problems. I think it's important. Education is key. And so that's what we've been doing, is teaching, trainings, and being, about education, about political, the political process, because, some of this that we're dealing with is because we don't vote.
Now that's right. So let me just ask you a question while you're right there, because there's a lot of research right now that's out there saying how people were so disappointed in how the election turned out that they're like, we're not voting anymore. We're done with voting,
Very
right?
true.
Absolutely, right? So, well, what does that do to our communities when we give up on the one thing that was fought hard for?
Absolutely. People died, right?
Yeah.
For us to have the right to vote.
Absolutely.
So I feel, again, what we need to do is to continue to educate. And once you educate, it brings about engagement, right? You think about the civil rights movement, right? Those people literally, or those during that time, linked arms. I always think about how they linked arms and they were willing to die for the cause, right?
Yes.
They were willing to die, lose their lives, for the cause. And so I think we've got to get back to where we make voting cool.
Ooh, come on.
It's your civic duty, right? We are so far away from that with everything that has been happening on the national level. And again, as Representative Pryor said, it trickles down.
It does. That's
It really trickles down. So we have been kicked back, I feel like 20 plus years, right? But we're not going back.
That's it.
I think that the endeavor of our human spirit is that we just, we don't, like I tell them, I'm like,
we're not going back.
we can't, I think the lack of information and the lack of education. So we have a generation that's perhaps missing a lot of the information that a lot of us got in churches or at, MLK programs, when you had to the whole city was closed down and you met somewhere with the choir, right? So I'm from here, y'all. So just so y'all know, these are things that happen, right? And so we have a lot of disenfranchised voters who really were disappointed. And we need to get them back to that point where it's like, okay, there's nothing new under the sun. So, how do we get them to these points to get back there? You educating them, and we got to make it cool.
So
I don't know how to do that.
Everything that's coming out of the state level, probably people are gonna run to the polls in
oh really
28, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because of the impact that it has on marginalized communities. And and that's who it impacts. That's who it's affecting. It's affecting people that look like us. It's affecting us that need the funding.
Yes.
Right? You're putting out funding for African American colleges, HBCUs, right? You know what I mean? So the things that are trickling down, I feel, from the national level, and with us doing our part, we'll encourage voters to vote. However, local elections are just as important. We don't have any elections this year, but we have elections next year, and it's very critical that we participate in those elections, because when you think about the mayor, right, and so we have mayor on the city, county, elected officials, school boards, township leaders who make decisions on our roads for public safety, right? So we've got to do our jobs to educate our communities and our folks about the importance, again, of voting, and that it's cool again, right? So we've got our work cut out for us, but we can do it as a community and with organizations like you guys and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's important that we start from the basics, right? Because I think that some of the conversation we have about why people don't vote.
Mhm.
Like you're talking about people sometimes that don't know what the Senate do with the Congress, like the basics.
They don't know the basics, correct.
And so you don't even understand the importance, right? Because you feel like after the presidential election, there is nothing else. But you bring up so many good points, like no, the stuff that affects you every day on those local elections, like
Absolutely.
that is the stuff that matters, and probably is even more important if you say, well, what happens in the White House doesn't affect my everyday life. Well, what happened in these local elections do?
They do.
So really understanding the different branches of government and what the importance is of voting and so forth. And I remember when you said make it cool again, it took me back. I'm gonna tell my age a little bit, but we used to have rock the vote.
I was about to
Don't
say,
play with me.
I thought you were going to
Don't
go
play
somewhere
with me.
else.
Rock the vote.
Okay.
So they used to have like BET,
Yes, they
used to
did.
have like concerts,
Yes.
fashion shows,
Mhm.
and it was all about. I mean, we got entertainment. You got to entertain us, right? You got
Yes.
entertainment, but it was all about education and voting and why it was important and all of the things. And so I think that you have something there with make it cool again, because the people that need to be voting, the demographic of people that we're talking about are often, not connected to this. And I think that the information that you all are providing today is super key in terms of making a shift, right? Transformational conversations, not just conversations you hear, but things that are going to change the landscape of where we live every day.
And this is what I tell people. If someone is working that hard to pass legislation
Then it
to
must be.
barriers to
What
keep
is that?
you from voting,
What is it saying?
imagine how important it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If someone is going to keep you pass laws, say you have to have an ID, you have to do this to even register to vote, you have to give blood almost in a baby just to register to vote.
Correct.
Then how important is that? That means it's something that is vitally important. They
Yeah.
understand how important it is. But when you stay home and don't vote, you're giving your power to them.
Mhm.
So why would you?
So
I'm not going to give up my power.
We have
Right.
to change that
my life.
narrative, Representative Carr, that our vote doesn't count.
That's the narrative.
Yeah, that's
We
it.
have to
You're
change
right.
that narrative, and I
You're
think
right.
we have too many voting barriers. It's funny you brought that up, because that was the next thing I
It's a
wanted
lot
to
of
say is we have too many voting barriers. We have the shortest voting time, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Right?
In the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
And so
You
again,
heard that?
I did hear it.
I
Now
think
listen.
yeah.
How do we change something like that? Is that okay? She pointed at you. But go ahead.
And we have had, and I would say, the Democrats have consistently tried to lengthen the time,
Right. Okay.
to have no fault absentee ballot
Mhm.
voting,
Mhm.
but Republicans continue to put up barriers consistently. As a matter of fact, this year, remember, I'm on elections. We had passed a bill that now students can't use their student ID. to vote.
That's what I saw.
So-
now I work at a university, so that's
So your
listen,
students,
they cannot use their ID to vote.
2/3 of the students
That's right.
on the campuses use their ID to vote.
Yes.
And your picture is on there. The legislature said you needed a picture ID.
Mhm.
Universities, they
Because
give
they-
kids a
absolutely.
picture ID.
And it's based on valid information.
And who better than universities to know whether or not their student
Yes.
is
Right.
an Indiana resident?
Or not.
Because they're paying either in-state or
That's right.
out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
You're right.
Who
You're
better?
right. But I think we're even talking about the real ID. So, little story. My grandmother was 101. She was born in the country of Mississippi. She was never able to get a birth certificate. Well, without a birth certificate, guess what else you can't get? You cannot get a real ID. That means you also probably cannot get a passport. That means that you probably cannot do things like travel, right? So it restricts your travel, but it also restricts your ability to really be mobile, right? Because now you need, absolutely, you
Very
have
much
to
so.
have the real ID. So I'm seeing the barriers, as we say, and it's not just our students; it is our most vulnerable population, our elderly,
Yes.
who for no reason. There's no reason why a person, and I've seen it. I saw her go back and forth to the doctor, and the doctor had to certify that she was alive. Now we live certify she was alive, and the state still would not give her a birth certificate. They would not issue. And so there are real barriers and real consequences actually to not voting.
Yeah.
Absolutely real consequences to not voting. So we talked a little bit about some of the legislation that we should be paying attention to. What are some other things that you all feel like we should be paying attention to, especially of community impacts?
So, school board elections.
Okay, come on, elections. Okay.
We had a bunch of bad stuff that passed this session that ended.
I mean, you want to write it down? I'll write it down. I have a list.
You got a list?
I have a list. I got a list.
I think the people want to know the list for real.
Give us some of the
give us
things.
some of the things that
Yes.
are passed that are like bad
Bad
things
bills.
that we need
But
to
you
say
need
these
to-
are bad
first of
bills.
all,
If you live in
She
my
brought
district,
handouts.
She got paperwork, y'all.
if you live in my district, you probably get my email.
And if you don't get the emails, get
You
on the
can sign
list so
up
that you
for
can sign up for the
Listen,
email.
yeah, you can sign up for it, but, the one bill that's going to, our school boards currently are not partisan. You don't have to declare
Oh,
whether
the
you're
devil
Democrat.
pass. Okay.
It passed, so now school boards become political. And we had people that came and testified and said, I don't know if this person's Democrat or Republican, I don't care. We're here to make sure that our teachers get paid, the buses run, that we have people that are able to fix the food for our kids, and we have support staff. They didn't care, that's what people cared about. So we had that. Another bad bill. This is our energy bill. And so it's called small modular nuclear reactors. And so what this bill is going to do is allow for utility companies, if they decide to build a nuclear reactor program, to go ahead and start charging you these fees, even though it's not completely built. It doesn't even have to come online. So if they decide, you know what, we've invested too much money, we don't think this is going to be a good idea, you still have to pay at least 80% of that.
Oh, wow.
That's another bad bill. And so people talk about their utility rates going up. You think about the senior citizens and utility companies that said, oh, it's only going to be $1 here or $1 there. By the time you add up your water, your sewer, your electric, and your gas bill, that dollar, it adds up to be a lot of person on fixed income. And so now you're having potentially this to be added to your bill. That's going to make it bad too.
Why would we even be paying for something that we're not even getting the benefit from?
Right.
And might not get the benefit.
Right.
from.
Might not.
What was the benefit? What was the purpose of saying yes to that?
She's
bill?
like,
You
I'm
know,
confused.
because I wasn't in a discussion, but I'll tell you the fly on that wall. I want to. When somebody said,
People
y'all,
have good relationships with certain people.
okay.
And
Fair.
and they're able to
And
get
that's
stuff
that
done.
on that.
And
And
that's
that's
that.
And that's that on that.
That's that. And then we had another bill dealing with evictions. Right now, if you get kicked out of your house or your a rental unit, you have 90 days or had 90 days to retrieve your stuff from one of these storage facilities. It's down to 45 days.
Okay.
So what does that mean for people in our community who are having a hard time?
Yeah.
If you're not able to pay that bill right now,
Mhm.
you are going to need at least 90 days to save up enough money to get your stuff out of
You gotta
storage
get a
facility.
job, you gotta make the money, you got,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Mhm. So, and I can go on and on and on.
She said,
but-
I got a list right
Yeah, I
here.
have a list. I'm serious. I have a list. The Medicaid bill, over 200,000 Hoosiers going to get kicked off of the Medicaid program because they're capping it at 500,000 people. So people are going to lose their health insurance.
How do they decide who gets and who does not?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What's the decision process? Who gets to determine that?
The FSSA.
So
they're the ones that decide. That are going to decide.
It's gonna be in that 500.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Again, this is why.
Okay, so first tell us what is FSSA?
Oh, the Family and Social Services.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the agency of the state of
This
Indiana,
is-
and I think, and that also works closely with the federal government as well, because a bunch of the money is a match. So
Mm.
we're not, even though it's a lot of money that we pay, we also get money from the federal government as well.
Okay.
I just want to say, this is why elections are so important.
Come on here.
Mhm.
Yes,
To
absolutely.
have people in office, they care about people
Mhm,
at the end of the day.
mhm.
And so that's why we need to engage in this democracy. It's not perfect, but it's all we have
Mhm,
because of exactly what Representative Pryor is sharing with us
mhm.
this evening.
There was something else that is really important, and it was the decision to not accept money for SNAP for like summer feeding for now. Y'all, I'm also a former K-12 food service director, so I understand that some of our children, they're hungry in the summertime. We're their only source of food,
Absolutely.
right? They have no other way to eat. What's really tea? Because why would you take food from, like, that's what it feels like now.
Well,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Okay,
It's just-
amen.
You know what?
Listen.
You don't have it, yeah.
Yeah,
That's not where my heart is.
yeah.
That's, and I'm sure not where our heart is,
Correct.
but when you're so
Majority.
focused on
Right.
cut,
That's it.
the people who don't have a voice
Mhm.
or the voiceless are the
Mhm.
people that get cut first. And the
Always,
people who are able
always.
to, who have the money
They
and
can
who can
afford
afford
it.
it, their voices, they don't get cut. They get incentives, they get credits, they get all these things to help get more. But the people who need the most, oftentimes, they have to fight a lot harder. And we're there, and I'm there, and the Black Caucus is there trying to make sure that their voices are heard. But I'm just one Democrat out of 30, out of 100. So there are 100 people in the House, not 70 Republicans and 30 Democrats.
Mhm.
And so we're in the super minority. Now, I'm still gonna go up there and be loud
You
and
gonna say your
vocal
stuff.
about, I'm still gonna fight for my people,
Right.
but and try to prick the consciousness of the people on the other side,
Mm.
because it also affects their constituents too. It
Mhm.
disproportionately may affect mine, but it affects their constituents too. So now I'm telling you
Yes,
about what's
for sure.
affected my constituents. So you know what? Help me out before they affect yours.
Well, your constituents
that's
are
it.
probably working in some of these areas, right? I don't think we like this. And to my understanding, that wasn't money that was coming out of the Indiana budget anyway. Like we're one of the states that said no to federal assistance, someone else giving us money to feed the program, which is it is crazy to me that we would make those type of decisions that are going to have, lasting impacts to folks. And
To your
yeah,
Black community.
come on here. Come on here
That's
now. I listen.
Yeah.
Because we know, in the summertime, your parents are at work.
Yep.
You at home by yourself. We already have programs where I also on the board of our local food finders, food bank, and I think it's important that we understand the importance of our food sources and why we are saying no. It's not just that we said no, but it's the why into it, right? Because we didn't have to. I want to kind of like shift a little bit and ask this question. So what advice, and I'm gonna ask and then we can go around, what advice you want to give to younger or first time voters who feel disconnected or disillusioned by the political process? We started that conversation, but I think just to be more intentional about what do we say to them? We have all these like younger folks that are gonna be coming on board voting, right? And they're hearing something like you talk about rock the vote. I was thinking of, I'm only a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. I was
You was
I was
back. Yes, you was. I went all the way back.
But I think I learned it though. That's just 40 years later, and I still in my psyche,
Mhm.
right? But now we're talking about federal cuts to PBS, ways that people were learning back then. How you cut Sesame Street, y'all? Big Bird, right? And so how do we help re-engage these people who are saying, yo, I'm not even gonna step up to the plate to vote. I don't even want to put my hat,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we're living in an age of technology.
Yes.
And so what I've learned from the hats that I wear is, again, education and engagement. So guess what? I've been telling folks, you guys, I don't want to do a TikTok video at 60. I'm 60, but I have to engage with
Yes,
those
listen,
that are on
you gotta go
TikTok.
where they
But
are.
if I need to do a TikTok
That's
video,
where they are.
y'all gonna see me on TikTok.
That's right. That's
But we have to face where we are at.
Yes.
And when we talk about Representative Carr, I'm gonna lean on you, those kitchen table issues, what are they?
Mhm.
What really are they?
Yes.
That's the question that I have. Will it be education? Is it the economy? Is it healthcare? What are those
That's good.
kitchen table conversations that will engage our voters and our young voters? Now again, TikTok will engage
Yes, it will. It will.
our young voters and education, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that is their future. But back to as we were talking earlier about local elections and how important local elections are. I think it's important to continue, but it's funny because our millennials and what are the Gen X's? or
Gen
I'm
X,
Gen
a
Zs?
millennial. I want
Oh,
to I'm stuck watching videos and all Generation Y, all of that.
Those generations are guided now by technology,
That's it.
by social
Media.
platforms,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
if you will. So we've got to utilize those social platforms, I feel, and do it moving forward. However, but we still need to do our traditional trainings as well. So if that is, you know, we still have to reach those individuals that are more seasonal like myself. But I think for our future, because that's the thing, they are our future.
That's it.
Yes.
They are
Yeah,
the future, so
for
we've
sure.
got to reach them where they are at. So I may be reaching out to you guys as organization to do a TikTok video.
That's it.
Like literally.
I don't listen. I'm a millennial that does not have TikTok, and I won't get it. But Dr. Q, listen, that's all you. I got your Instagram. I do IG. Okay, cool.
I just think
That's the
that
way to go,
where
though.
we are at in regard
Yes.
to our younger voters,
I
because
agree.
they are engaged, and we have to meet people where they are at.
Yeah, I think those two things are critical, what they care about, right? And
Yes.
she asked you that question, like, what are the things at the table that they care about? Because that's what moves the needle for a lot of people. Is it gonna affect me? Vote for the white, you know, the federal level was at the White House, and that doesn't affect me, you know? So those questions and asking that, and I guess it seems like you named some, it seems like all of them, right? Like all of the things, education, healthcare, and all of the things. How do we decide how to prioritize some of the things we should be talking about in our community?
Yeah, I will say this too. I believe in a balance. So I believe having at the table and the red table.
Come
I
on.
believe you need to have your more seasonal voters, right?
Okay.
And then you need your younger voters too. I think we all have something to bring to the table, right? I don't think seasonal voters, because again, like you said, I don't want to do a TikTok video, but we have something to offer because we paved the way, right? We have more
Absolutely.
experience
Yes.
and knowledge
Absolutely.
than our younger voters, but I do feel that our younger voters need to be at the red table as well.
I
And so
agree.
I like that balance. That's
And I think what you said is like almost a mixture of it, because there are some conversations that I've been having in my circles about how do we, you know, we used to be a time when you would listen to your elders, right? Where you would sit at their knees, you would
Come
hear
on.
what they had to say.
Operational work.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying you used to, because we don't and we don't have enough of that. And so I'm really trying to focus on how do I engage young people, and even having conversations, doing lifespan interviews with, you know, your elders in your family. Go to the eldest member, not just in your family, in your community, in your church, in your group, whatever, because they are going to say something about civil rights. There's no conversation that's going to ever happen, because they all lived through it. So they all have something to say. So even if you're having a conversation about, like, tell me about your upbringing, it's going to come out, right? And so I think that's the other part, is like, how can we re-engage around these kitchen table conversations with our elders?
We've got to change the narrative that's out there.
Absolutely.
That's number one. Number
That's
one
right.
narrative, and the narrative that I will say, the negative narrative that's coming from the other side, because people believe in lies. And that's another thing. Like, I've tried to tell people, do not believe everything you see on social or read on social media.
Fact check these things.
Yeah, fact check. So I think that for me is the beginning of too. We have to change the narrative. And I would say this, and I'm really sitting at the red table, being partisan, although I am the chair of the Democratic Party, but I will say this, that we have got to do a better job too at telling the story. Like you said though,
Yeah.
the civil rights movement, we have to tell our story.
Yes.
We can't just allow that negative narrative and the lies, like you
Some of it
stated about
downright, absolutely.
the churches, right? With I would say our new lead, lieutenant governor. But anyway, is we've got to change the narrative. We have to continue to share the story about, you know, the truth. We have to continue to tell the truth.
The truth is it's a
truth.
commodity these days.
It
It feels
is.
like it. And so, but I do think that it's incumbent upon us to do that, right? So how do we turn our political power into policy power, right? So that our votes really will translate into real results. How do we do that? Especially when we're thinking about like we in the super minority. How do you even define a super minority? So who's coming up with these terms? I'm just like, what a super majority?
So this is the importance of having the super minority.
Of the terminology. Okay, cool. Okay.
It's whether or not there's enough people to conduct business.
Mm,
And
okay.
so because we are as a Democrat, we're in the super minority. Republicans, they can conduct business whether we
Without us.
show or not.
Mm.
That's the importance.
That doesn't seem
So
like
if
that
we
should be
have-
right. Like it should be
It
like
doesn't-
yeah, it like
It doesn't, but that's the rule. So 3/4, and so we as Democrats we need at least 4 more seats in order for us to effectively be able to say no. You know, we're gonna hold off because you know we have some political power and capital, but without having those 4 seats, it puts us at a disadvantage, unfortunately. Ironically, though,
Okay, come on.
some of the time they don't always agree with Republicans.
Yes.
So
we saw
we
some of those
They agree,
disagreements.
you're right, yeah.
We saw some of those disagreements in this session.
oh
I
yeah,
mean, because I was talking to this, I was like, oh, they over there
They
screaming.
know.
Right? Listen, and you can tell. And y'all just sit back and wait. Y'all said, where the fans at? That's my response right now. Okay.
That's right.
You know what? That's what we want to do.
yeah. So you know we're still needed, even though we're in the super minority. And in the Senate, it's 50 senators, but it's only 10 Democrats.
Yes.
And out of the 150, there's only 16 blacks.
Super minority.
So
Okay.
There is,
Super
and there
minority.
is.
in the
Wow.
super minority, but
Wow.
a vocal voice, particularly for the Black Caucus, a vocal voice in the consciousness of the legislature.
Mhm.
So, you know, we're always going to be standing up for the less fortunate, for minority communities, for people that don't have a voice. And we're always going to be putting those issues on the table. But as it relates to the young people, the one thing that I would say is we have to make sure that the young people know that their voice is being heard and that we value them. And I think that is the key to getting them to work with the older generations in understanding the importance of their vote, because they do feel disenfranchised. They do feel, you know, the old guard, you know,
Yeah.
they're not listening to me. So we have to make sure that they understand that they are important, and they have great ideas and new thoughts about how to do stuff. I mean, we have to do the old stuff because the older people and people like me, you know, that's how I function. That's the world I live in. But these younger people, they're getting their information literally from social media.
30
That's it.
seconds.
And it
90
doesn't
seconds,
even,
second or
it
less.
doesn't
Absolutely.
matter. And this is what's amazing to
Or
me.
Google.
Or Google,
With no
that
representation.
people think that simply
Or
because you have
silent.
a mic in front of you,
That's right.
Right.
that you're giving them incorrect information.
Very
And that
true.
is so troubling. They don't want to listen to traditional news because, oh my God, it's just fake news. But the person that you're listening to, they haven't done any research. Like the lieutenant governor, you don't understand what research
So you get
is.
up in front and
So you
just
get up in
talk
front, you
absolutely
get a
reckless.
mic, and you're saying stuff that's false, inaccurate, and people are believing these things, and that's a detriment to society. regardless
and
of
we see
regardless of your race, it's going to hurt you when you put out false
When you put out-
information.
yeah.
And we see that because, I mean, now there's some social media platforms took away the ability to fact check. And
Oh,
so
yes, they
now,
did.
yes, so now
Yes.
anybody can
Can
say
say- yep.
anything and make claims. And I mean, we're seeing the sources that we thought we could trust, right? I mean, newspapers, magazines, like, listen, y'all, I was an avid 60-minute watcher, right? And we even see some changes in how things are being conducted,
Yeah.
right? Right. And so this idea that we can trust journalism to educate us is now our false reality, right? That's not something that we can control. Now I want us to have a little balance. Okay,
I do think there is an effort by traditional media to get it right.
Okay.
I do think that.
Okay.
I'm gonna chime in there because we had last year at IBE, one of the awardees was our very own Indiana Black Expo.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All right.
They do every year a luncheon where they highlight significant people in their own right. And we had our very own soror, Soledad O'Brien,
Oh yeah.
highlighted journalism, right? And she talked about the very thing you're talking about. There are some traditionalists, right, that want to get back to that fact checking and making sure stuff is credible and real, and that is something that people can lean on. But without that, right, you have information, and I think it not only drives a foundation that's faulty, but it also shapes perceptions about whole communities and people based on something that might not even be true.
Absolutely.
So we talk about journalism and the spaces that we're talking about now, even social media, because the youth and the kids believe that there still should be a common ground, a foundation for whether we're talking about traditional journalism or social media that has some type of authentic fact checking and so forth, because if not, you can shape whole communities and start whole narratives based on one false comment or situation.
Like the community in Ohio.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm from Ohio, so yes.
Shout out to.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm really at the
Yeah,
we are on the struggle bus.
And I was so offended by that. I wouldn't even
Yes,
say what
sir.
the company is.
Yeah,
but
right.
I'm sure you all probably know
Y'all
what
know
I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
y'all know it
But,
was offensive.
You know, and that stuff starts getting air and people believe it. And it's like, what facts do you have? What proof do you
But do
have?
you
And
know
there's
what-
no proof.
What happened as a result of this? What we talking about?
They left.
It right. It changed their community.
It did.
So much from people driving through, what they thought about stopping, gas stations, food places that
That's right.
people weren't even stopping in the town anymore. So we talk about the comment like, oh, it's so egregious, but the people that live there
Yes.
every day, the
worse for
impact
them.
that it has on
It
them,
has a cost.
it does.
Come on here.
Right. So
There's a cost
Yeah.
to that.
It is.
So
Yes.
that false narrative can really drive some places and some thoughts and culture, but it also can have real life impact on people. And I think that's what you were talking about what affects people real life every day.
Now, we heard some of the bad. I know we're gonna take some questions if we have some, but I want to hear some of the good. Like,
Here's some good bills.
give us some good,
Yeah.
some good things that came
Good,
from
bad,
this.
and
Yeah. Give us with some good things, you
Yeah.
know.
So one good thing was the bill dealing with evictions again.
Okay.
This particular bill is a situation in which a person may have gotten kicked out of their rental unit, and they it's on their record. And so it has been where it stayed on their record forever.
You mean no expungement ever? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
unless you went through all these procedures and stuff to get it done. But under this new legislation, you don't even have to go to court. If you feel your payments to that landlord, that can get expunged without you even having to
Nice.
go
Okay.
to court after 7 years.
Okay.
That is going to have a significant impact on all
Yes,
communities,
all
low-income communities, particularly the African American community. So now you can get your records expunged. I mean, that's just common sense. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to be punished forever and ever and ever. Another bill that we passed is going to require teachers to make $45,000 a year instead of 40.
Listen, now I was at a high school today, and I was talking to a group of students, and two of them, they were like, I really want to be a teacher, but they don't make enough money. Now listen, that's the starting pay. It's up from there.
Is that right?
And
Yeah.
the impact is real. We need teachers.
And 45 is still too low.
45 is low. I'm not gonna lie about it. but
They said that 45.
I remember I had friends coming out of college who were making 27 as
Right.
teachers. $27,000 a year as teachers.
That's
That's like making 12,000 once you take out the taxes. So yeah, 45 is better, right? But I'm sure we can do better
Well,
than
I
that.
think that also, when we talk about teaching a little bit, it also goes to how we as a country value
Value
teachers.
Come on.
Come on here.
You know, other countries, they pay a lot more.
Oh, yes, they do.
They value the outcomes.
They do. I went to Dubai years ago, and part of the trip was just a historical view of the country and a tour and all of that. And the status of a teacher is like the status was so high, and education was free, of course, no matter what, it was equal and all that, much different than how we do. But teachers were held in very high regard, and I was like, and we act like teachers that are, in our country are just like babysitters. They don't really deserve all
like
this money
educate.
because they're
Absolutely.
so
Well, first of all,
crazy.
if they are babysitters, you sending your kids there, okay, and you know who you send. So pay these people more, even if that's exactly what they are, but they're more than that.
But when you said babysitters, they should be paid more
Come
because
on.
they're doing that also.
They're doing that also.
doing that also.
They're doing a
Teaching,
whole bunch of
teaching,
stuff.
and counseling.
Helping,
And
come on.
listen,
They're
this is
jack
where-
of all trades. We're trying to figure out how they want to.
Kids being
Absolutely.
sick.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
everything. It's just-
Everything.
and so,
Caregivers.
There you go.
They're
Caregivers.
second line parents in a lot of, like I tell them all the
They
time,
are.
those teachers
That's true.
have one of the hardest jobs.
Yeah.
Cause you know, kids are interested.
I mean,
Like
you
that.
know your kids.
You know,
And you know who you sending. And I think that it is so critical that we start to look at that and the impact of it. I remember even at my current job, I found my government and econ teacher and I sent him an email.
Well, how much extra time did teachers give? Anyway?
Listen.
Well, I'm sorry, 45,000, it's not enough.
It's not.
That's not enough.
I'm gonna be honest,
Like,
50,
you're
55
underpaid.
is not enough,
Educators
right?
are underpaid.
But I think that was, and you can tell me what's the spirit of it, that like 45 is the base, and then, cause some of that pay is based on that particular tax district, and you don't wanna mix it. Like, what was the spirit of making it that level?
I'm sure it had to depend on the tax base and how
Mhm.
much school corporations have.
Correct,
You know,
okay,
we
I can see
have
that.
we have other legislation that is going to be cutting into the local school funding.
Mhm.
And then because of the property tax situation, so
What's the property tax
where do
situation?
you get the money from?
That's fact.
You know,
To
so
be, yeah.
yeah, and
Yes.
the state isn't giving enough money. We only increased K through 12 funding by 2%, but that was the average. So some schools are gonna get more than 2%, some schools are gonna get less.
Depending
So
on what though.
depending on the number of students
Come on.
that are
girl.
going there,
Yes.
and depending on where your school is located.
Okay.
And then
So-
IPS or charter is a whole nother subject.
No,
We're
yeah,
not
yeah,
doing
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We're gonna do a
That's
red,
what you
we
wanna
need to
talk
listen.
about.
You want to touch it? We need to do a whole red table talk just about that. We'll see y'all at IB. Okay, come on.
This is critical.
Yes.
So I won't get into charters because they're still a form of public school.
Yes.
But the voucher program is not a form of public school.
Mhm.
It's you're getting state dollars to send your child to a private
Private.
school.
Mhm.
The
What
problem
does that say about
is,
education?
we're giving an additional $100 million so that people, regardless of their income, are able to send their kids to a private school.
Mhm.
Now, what kids are gonna get accepted
Well, listen.
at those private schools? Because you choose who you want to go to that school. At the same time, we're not fully funding pre-K. We're not fully funding daycare and childcare for our kids. So we are giving all this money so rich people who are able to, millionaires, billionaires, are able to send their kids
private schools, but the lowest income individuals, we're not giving them money for childcare and daycare so that they have an opportunity to go and get a job so that they're not dependent on the system. So I mean, and I just can't wrap my mind about why you want to stranglehold for people who are wanting to do better, but they can't do better because we're creating a system where the haves are getting everything and the have-nots are just getting the crumbs, if they even get that.
But I think that we're going back to this conversation of voter, like disenfranchisation. Disenfranchisement. Come on, get the words together, right? Because if the purpose of education is to create a more informed citizen who can actually be in this democratic society and live, then if we need to attack something, we need to attack education, right? So we need certain people to be more educated and aware, and we need others to be less informed and aware, right? And when we break down certain parts of public education in favor of other parts of public education, then what are we saying to the people who have to live in those communities? Because we've heard the conversation, this is a great school district, but this is not a great school district. But what is that based on? And how do we, as a state, reconcile that we are making decisions that will impact even how students can get into the colleges that live in the state, right? We don't want to talk about it. That's a whole nother red table talk. But I'm saying these are conversations that are going to impact the democracy.
You know what, I just want to say this, that I look at like during slavery days, they don't want us to be educated. So it's back to the communities.
Yes, to educate.
Exactly,
Oh,
right?
glad
And
you
they
said
don't
that.
want
Yeah.
us involved in this process either, right? Because they do want to control and run everything. So what do? You suppress the vote and you suppress people by taking away their education. So even like I said, during slavery days, right? They didn't want us to be educated. That's not, they know everything, because guess what? It gives us an upper hand, right? So of course they're going to do everything possible, I feel, for African Americans in particular, but to suppress, whether it's education, whether it's voting. And I would also like to just add that although we're where we're at right now, but we have to continue to push the Republicans to do right. Like we have to continue to push the Republicans to make voting fair. We have to continue. We can't just like lay down or sweep it under the rug, right? Because they're the super minority, right? We have to continue to do these things because at the end of the day, and this is educational, they are the super majority. So they do have the upper hand. And I think we have to take all of this into consideration, right? In regard to it, like you said, it goes back to again, voting. And until we are the super majority, and we had an opportunity this last election cycle, we had an opportunity.
What I'm saying is that, y'all, that's all I got for you.
Just to break it.
Yeah, I think as we're talking, you were sitting here and you were like, we have to do something. And I think it's important, again, taking y'all back. Y'all remember FUBU. Y'all remember that?
For us,
For
by
us,
us.
by us. Like there is some responsibility in the community.
That's right.
And there is a responsibility not to wait.
And you don't get to shrink your responsibility because it's going to come back. It's gonna come right back around.
Yes.
Right back to you.
Especially, I think as you were talking about, just what we need to do and all of that, if we continue to, we've seen this for decades now. We can continue to wait if we want to and hope.
That's right.
And ask, or we can be active and proactive about educating and move from education to action, right? And I think that lends way to this conversation about civic engagement. And for me, I'll add cultural responsibility, because there's a responsibility regardless of what demographic I sit in. There is a responsibility to the community because there is a greater good and greater picture. And so I like how you were just talking about that, because that makes me think like, okay, how do we take this conversation about what a person can do? What do you tell your constituents that they can do to change the narrative or change what they're seeing that they might not necessarily like?
And the truth is that we've always been as a people a super minority. But that has had no bearing on our ability to push the needle and get the things that we have needed. So we've been that. Like nothing new under the sun. That's
Yeah, come on.
That's because we become too successful.
Ooh,
Wait a minute.
you know what?
That's why
What a fan at? Hold on.
Where them fans at?
Boom. All right, go ahead. This,
Listen.
it's a
we become
success.
too
It's successful
We drank
in a
the
threat. So
Kool-Aid.
how do I stop these people from getting to where I am?
Yeah.
Or in a lot of cases, excelling and doing better because
with less resources.
Come
on.
See,
there you go.
how did
Less
they
resources.
get here? And
we started
yes.
out way behind.
Everything
We started out way
tried
behind.
to use against us. We literally
How
took
did
it
they get here? That's
and
the question.
made something out of it. Down to oxtails. Y'all gotta stop talking about oxtails. They used to be cheap and now y'all like it, and now we gotta pay our money.
But listen.
Stop eating oxtails.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. Go ahead, Red.
But I think that's the answer to that. But for my constituents, I tell my constituents that you have to, basically, you have to vote, you have to be involved.
Absolutely.
You have to let me, if there are issues that are affecting you, let me know.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I'm in a situation, I never call someone, when I have problems with my utility bills, I don't call and say, a representative Pryor, I want help. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna call like I'm a constituent.
Yeah, constituents.
Because I want to know how my constituents are being treated.
What's the service?
So you can't tell me, oh no, this doesn't happen. Oh yes, it does happen. Because when I called, this is how I was treated. So it's important for me to know and understand how my constituents are being treated, so that I'm better able to serve them. But then my constituents have a responsibility also to let me know what's happening, because I can't be everywhere
all the time,
and I don't know everything.
Right.
So if you let me know what's happening with you, a situation that has gone wrong, I'm gonna try to help and I'm gonna try to resolve it. But you have to speak up and let people know what's going on. You can't hold it to yourself.
Right.
And you have, and I may not know the answer. I may not be able to solve the issue, but if I can be a resource to help you get the answer and get the issue resolved, that's my responsibility.
You know what? You could ask the question, what is something good? Guess what? We have elections coming up.
Listen, I vote everything. Every time there's an opportunity to vote.
Be there.
I'm gonna vote at home, in the work, when they say what y'all want to do, I'm voting. Just as a practice. A practice. What you want me to vote for? I'm gonna vote, and you should. As a matter of fact, mock elections in your home. Have your children vote on things. Okay, what y'all want to do? You know what I'm saying? Teach them how to vote. Absolutely.
And my child is she's in elementary school, and so she talked about her school talked about voting. She came from mom gotta cast my vote and all of those
I
things.
know that's right.
Yeah, first grade.
Absolutely.
And just making sure that she understood. And I think it starts, we feel like we gotta wait till they get about 18. No, that's not when you're supposed to start teaching them, because they can vote at 18. That's too late. We start much earlier than that. And like you said, that's something good in an election.
We have elections coming up, so we can make change.
And I think not just that we have elections coming up, take your kids with you, but also consider running. We talked about school boards. You need to think about whether you have the capacity, the compassion, and the ability to run for an office. And then you need to decide yes and go and do it.
Don't run against us.
Okay, she said, no, she said, hey, there's some positions out there. These are not one of them. But I do think, especially at the school board, and I don't know if y'all know, Indianapolis Alumni Chapter covers 11 service areas.
Yeah, we do.
That's a lot. 11, right? I got it right. Okay, cool.
That's right.
That's a large amount.
Yeah.
I'm sitting next to you.
Yeah,
Right. So that's a large landmass.
Yes, it is.
Y'all, there are so many people who can be prepared and ready to go, right? If you never thought that you could do it, you don't have to have the education. I don't know if there's education. I don't believe so level. I think you have to have a desire, and you get you a committee of good people around you that can give you some accountability and can give you some direction.
We can be better at being proactive. And I would say this to you, when I became eligible, to vote, I'm gonna be honest with you. Nope, I didn't know everything, but guess what? My parents were like, because that's the generation we came from. You vote, right? Regardless, when you become eligible. So, like you said, I just think, again, some of the traditional ways were not so bad, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Yeah, because the importance of it. Yeah, it's the importance of this democracy that we serve.
So I'm gonna pause here for a second. I wanted to see, are there, I
was gonna say, y'all
guys
got
shoot us some questions.
Let's
I
shoot
know.
us some-
If there's some questions, we're gonna start taking them. So we're gonna take some of the questions. I'm gonna get them right here. I'll read them as they're coming, so you guys can put them in. We'll continue the conversation, but we want to bring you all in. We know it's good stuff with a T at the end.
This is good.
This is good stuff.
Really
And so
good.
we want to hear what you all are asking. And we have just a wealth of knowledge here with these ladies. So we're going to put the questions right here. You all can text the questions to me or send them this way so we can continue the conversation.
Have some
we've
chat.
And with some in the chat. Okay.
Please explain the content of the DEI legislation that was passed in the Indiana General Assembly.
What's that?
It's basically school corporations and the state government cannot have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So if you have in a lot of universities, they're getting rid of those programs. They're having to put people in different places. Schools, again, you can't teach ethnic studies in schools anymore. So basically what the bill is, and the title of the bill is non-discrimination, which is just a false
discrimination for a bill called non-discrimination.
It's just crazy. But basically, it's just saying that you can't have any diversity programs for schools or universities or state governments. And so all of that's out the door now, because certain groups feel that if and if you do anything to elevate people at the level that they should be at, again, you're a threat. You're competing with me, and they don't want that competition. So
I would encourage people, as we're talking about some of these, go online and read the bill.
Yeah.
Reading is fundamental. You want to know what something says, get that bill up and read it, because there's a lot of information that is encompassed in some of these legislative pieces that you don't know unless you actually read through it. Now, that bill was very different than what it started, to be honest. It was very different from what it started.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it was a horrible bill.
Oh, no.
It's still horrible.
She said that way. I'm gonna call it what it is. It was horrible.
It was awful, is what I heard her say.
It was.
Okay.
When it came to the Senate, came from the Senate. The House stripped a lot of it out. And so what you have is a stripped down version of the bill. Matter of fact, when the bill came to the House, we were talking about education. We have 3 programs that give kids scholarships to go to college to teach. William Crawford Minority Teaching Scholarship, the Early Rogers teaching programs, and Next Gen Minority Teaching Program. All 3 of those were going to be eliminated under that bill. The Black Caucus worked to save those programs. They're not going to be called, they'll still be called by their names, but we had to expand.
I was gonna mention
to specific counties. I saw that they put
we have to give a little, right?
Is that how it's an exchange?
Yeah, it was an exchange. So now the entire state doesn't qualify. So we have 5 counties that can qualify for the program, but it's opened up to everybody in those. All the students. But those counties have the most minority students in them. So even though it's still a bad bill, it really hurts my heart that we had to even take those programs down to that level. We're still able to provide those programs to students, but I'm still really disappointed that we're able to. I'm thankful that, but this goes, I think, to some extent to, we haven't talked about this necessarily, relationships. Even though we're in the super minority as Democrats, you still have to have relationships
with your Republican colleagues. And it's because of the relationship that we had that we were able to even get that legislation watered down somewhat and get it to a position where we're not going to eliminate those 3 programs.
So I know we have more questions, so let's take another question from our live right now.
Okay. There's a question in the live, and I'm going to read it exactly what it says. What can we do as parents to protest learning their history? Meaning the revisionist history. So they don't want to talk about slavery. They don't want to talk about things that have affected people of color throughout history.
So how can you protest that?
Protest the revisionists.
Well, I was gonna say, you're gonna have to show up to these school board meetings. All right, the school board meets every month, and that includes the summertime, no days off. And I think part of what we need to start doing, see, we come from a generation of parents that they showed up. They didn't like something, they were right there. They were right there at the school. They were in their PTAs, being very active in PTAs. They were active with a duster.
Came up there with a duster.
Now they coming up there to discipline you. You ain't coming up there to advocate for you. We have got to start telling people, you gotta go up to your school board meetings, because they can make policies if you're not there. But if you're there and you got some time that you can say, look me dead in my eyes, and you tell me that you're about to make this decision on behalf. Right. So I think there was a misconception that, that what school districts teach is mandated by the federal level. And it's not. Your local community determines the curriculum for your school district. So if you don't like what your school district is teaching, then you need to go to your local school district and either fill out the application to run for office and get on the school board, because I would love to have parents on school boards. I think that's critical, because it's your children going through this process, and not just people who may not have any educational knowledge, experience, or connection to that community. You see what I'm saying? So you got people on school boards, and they don't have kids, or they ain't having kids in the school district. No, but I'm here because of whatever. This is political, and I think that bill's gonna make it even more political, right? Because now we're gonna have because now you're gonna have partisanship, and people are gonna be like, okay, well, you gotta be this or this, and then based on that, the perception of what should be taught in that district is going to be based on what you think is in alignment with that political party, and not the truth. Right now, I can't help it if you feel bad over what history had. If you feel bad, do better today.
That's it. And that strategic plan in making school board races, partisan, is going to turn out the vote for them. So if they have Republicans running,
because then you're gonna vote for that, right? Because you only see.
We need to turn out the vote.
That's what changes.
We need to turn out the vote, and that's what changes things. And I will say this to what you were saying is, we need to hear your voices.
Come on, here. There we go.
You have a voice, right?
You have a voice.
And township board,
same thing.
And what we're just talking about, school board races are so important. I tell people that want to run for office, oh my God, they want to run, for president.
Yeah.
School board and township boards are so important.
Come on here.
They're so community.
They are.
Right, they are so community.
And the bill for the school boards, the reason why this became so political is because there were a couple of Democrats that ran and won in school board out of Carmel or in Hamilton County. And so people found out that they have a couple of Democrats on the school board, and now they are piping mad about that. And so
why? If the job is to determine the education of what's best for the kids in this community.
You know what they said to me? Said to us on committee. We need to know that they have the right morals.
I didn't know political parties have morals. Amen.
Well, according to some Republicans,
they do.
If you look at the Democrat platform, I'm gonna tell y'all this. Watch those hearings. the committee hearings, you will be amazed at some of the stuff we hear.
You will hear the morals. on
You
the- well, I get
will
that.
hear that. You will see the lieutenant governor actually show up in our committee hearing to testify in support of that school board bill. When you need to be up there running the Senate, you do not need to be down here in committee.
So you have
Well,
a
okay.
location.
I'm
with
sorry.
Senate.
She is
I mean, but that's
The people want-
that's true.
Yeah, the
Go ahead.
people want to know. I mean, I think some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat. No, this is good. This is good, and I think making us. So that's why we're having the red table talk, right? People need to know. Like some people probably didn't even know that. Like what? So this is important. I know we got some other good questions
Yes.
in the
Okay.
chat. Let's continue.
So there's another question. Is there a legal reason the Social Action Committee wouldn't be allowed to partner with high schools to set up voter registration at high school graduations?
Oh, are you asking me? I'm not okay, the chair, co-chair of social action. Well, there is no legal reason. It's not to say that we couldn't do those type of things. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes we're not the only ones that do that. League of Women Voters, like other organizations, we can be in those spaces, and not just the graduation space, but also just like lunchtime. Like there is no legal reason to in short of that. But okay, maybe
Well, let's
it's-
channel the question to the chair of the Democratic Party. What can you do, or what can you tell us to do to mobilize or to do more voter engagement or registration for the community so that we can get people to the polls during our next election?
Absolutely. I think it's important that we as a whole, not just the Democratic Party, but every organization can have a voter registration drive. I tell everybody, it doesn't take a degree, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, it doesn't take a class to register voters. You just get the forms, we can provide you with the forms, and you go set up and have a voter registration drive. Now, I will say this, however, if you're gonna do it at Walmart, right, or go to the schools, you just have to get permission, right, from those places. But I'll tell you this, at Walmart, you could probably set up on the very end of the parking lot, right, where nobody knows, and set up a voter registration drive. I think it's important that we continue to register voters, and this is maybe another conversation for the red table, but I will say this, we have plenty of registered voters, they're just not voting.
Yes.
So, but we
Just say.
got to keep, we have to keep registering voters, and hey, how about this, maybe persuade some voters to come over to the good side. But I was
We're nonpartisan.
we are, I'm sorry.
Okay, but
I
that's partisan.
agree with
You said
seriousness, anyone can do a voter
Are you
registration.
talking to me?
You are not, it's not breaking the law or.
Don't think so.
Yeah, and I think as we talk about some of the work of our social action committee, I think it's important to know how much work they have done, right? When you talk about 11 service areas, right? You talk about a service area, you talk about 11 areas, that's a lot of work, right? So we did have a time where they, went to the school boards and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot that we can do to continue to elevate, and getting wisdom, like from what you just said about how we can do it, and all of that are some of the ways that we can just start to think about and have continued discussions or whatever. Because we haven't done it doesn't mean we can't.
That's right.
But it's important to highlight the things that have been done that we can continue to build upon. I think the idea is to grow the impact that you have, right? Extend your reach even further every time you do something.
And I would start with your family. A lot of us, including myself, we have lots of family members that are not participating, right?
Absolutely.
I carry voter registration forms in my bag, right?
Yeah, you be at the cookout.
Yeah, Thanksgiving,
Make sure you
talk
boots
about
on the ground.
Yeah, right. Because won't be no Thanksgiving.
Right.
I don't be people who don't vote. Amen. I'm gonna never see that sticker before the Christmas gift get tossed around. So if there, I want to give some resources, because I know we have some people, but I want, how do we continue to stay engaged? And I think there was a question, we talk about how do we So I heard representative over here tell us about like she want to be called, y'all. But let me tell you how you can do it. 5 calls, right? There's a system called 5 calls.
Right here.
You can download it on your phone, and it will tell you who are your people. You put your zip code in. It'll tell you who your people are. It has everything from how to contact them, what to say when you contact them, with the issues that you can look at any issue. It is also nonpartisan. You download the 5 Calls app and be in community, and that means and not just the Democrats, the Republicans too, because they hear your voice. I'm calling everybody. Matter of fact, what I made a plan in my life to do, and you can do the same, is as soon as I finish church and worship, I'm on 5 calls and I'm sending my emails weekly because I want to know what you're doing. I want you to know that I see what you're doing, and we can all be in community. There's some other resources that I want to share too. We have Vote 411, which is vote411.org. That's a place that you can see when we have a ballot, who's on your ballot. You can check your voter registration. You can look at things in your area. IndianaVoters.com is important for us. That has all of that information. Plus, you can find your polling place. You can track and request absentee ballots. Like, we need to start to and Indiana Rock the Vote. We talked about that too, right? IndianaRockTheVote.org / how to vote in Indiana. Voter information, mobilization, education is critically important. These are some great resources, and if somebody want to just go ahead and drop some of these resources in that chat so that folks can have access to that. And if there's others around the table that you want to say, okay, so here goes some other ways. Now, once you contact your rep, it's important to do this. There's a box that's gonna say, do you want to hear back from me? I absolutely do, right? So I remember I sent information, my opinions, and it's your opinions, your personal opinions, right? I sent mine to my representative. I think it was about the SAVE Act. I don't want it, I don't like it. And what I got in return is the SAVE Act has been like, we are doing this to help you. And I was like, but I told you I want that. So now I have to emphasize my point. I got, hey, I saw that you sent this to me. And I want you to know that I don't like it, right? Because, and make sure you call people from your zip codes because they're tracking who contact. Is that right? Don't let me lie to the people.
So I would say,
don't lie.
I have to.
I want you to know that.
I represent 67,000 people. Come on.
Wow.
No, I don't get, my district isn't a district that needs as many services and where I get as many calls as some others.
Okay.
However, the importance for me are people in my district. So I can't, if I'm getting, I like to hear from people from other districts.
But you need
it's
the
great,
people.
but I have to focus on the people in my district.
Yes.
So I won't tell anyone, don't contact me if you have an issue, because I will try to help you, but I'm gonna focus on the people in my district, because I don't represent more than 67,000 people.
That's right.
And that's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
And I'm one person. I'm one person. So, yeah, contact me, but you really need to be contacting your person, because
Get on that 5 calls.
So
you know,
I gotta say this. That means there's some homework. I got to give them.
You are a teacher.
No, I really, but I gotta give some.
people.
Listen, there ain't too many resources for action not to follow.
Come on.
There's not enough for me, to sit in these conversations and I feel empowered, and then we go and there's no change, there's no needle move, there's no action, right? So for me, what are you going to do? It's and I want to be mindful that there are novice. Like, we have a lot of people that don't know anything about anything. Downloading the app is easy. Downloading the app is easy. You need to know what to say. You can look at, they tell you the bills, and it says what's important to you at the top. You pick what's important to you.
That's right.
Maybe the SAVE Act ain't important to somebody. That's all right. That might not be important to you. But what is? Something on that list is important.
There has to be.
Call about that, right? So that's the homework, is take one of those, and we drop this stuff in the chat. Take one of those apps, one of those websites, and put it on your phone today.
Yes.
All right.
And 5 calls, you can actually also do it. Like, you don't want to put an app on your phone, don't have room, right? Yes. That might be a testimony. You can go on a computer and also you can go to the website, right?
Yeah,
I think it's 5calls.org, right? And so those are also ways that folks can really be engaged. It's easy to complain about something, but but it's hard to take action. But it really is not hard. Like there's so many things at our fingertips. Get out there and take action, right? So are there other questions? I know we
Yes,
Can I-
there.
Can I give two more reasons?
Yes, you may.
Yes.
You
So,
must.
The state website, you can, when I said you can see the videos when we're in session, you can literally watch us while real time when we're in session. You can also pull up all of the bills and get the fiscal analysis. I mean, it is super duper easy for you to follow a bill, to read a bill. Well, some of the bills are kind of complicated. So read the fiscal notes,
And get you a
but you can
dictionary.
still, but the website is all there. The
Mhm.
committees, the session is all there. So you can do that when we're in session. The other thing is I'm co-founder of an organization called Hoosier Women Forward. And that's a training organization where we train women to be advocates.
Let's drop that in there.
Drop that in the
Women
chat.
Forward. Somebody put that in
Hoosier
there.
Women Forward,
The web address.
I think is,
I'll look it up. Don't worry
yeah,
about it.
yeah, yeah, look it up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you
Keep
look it up.
We'll lie to the people.
But it doesn't,
We got-
I don't wanna lie to you though. It's called Hoosier Women Forward, and we're in the middle of taking applications. We'll take between 23 or 21 and 23 candidates. It's a very competitive process. It's a statewide process, but we're always looking for dynamic women to apply for the program. And so the application's open. You'll need some recommendations. It's a training program. It's not focused on just becoming an elected official. You know, you may get a little bit of that, but it's also about just training women to become leaders in their communities. Because we
that's
talked
it.
about, we talked about running for office.
Yes.
But maybe it's serving on a board. Those zoning boards are important because do you want a strip club next to a school? The person that's on the zoning board makes a determination about that. So those board and commissions, so teaching women to be leaders within their community that could be running for office, but that could mean
But
so
don't
many,
have to.
even in your job.
Right.
You want to move up in your job. It helps out with that as well. So
Listen.
That sounds like a
Please,
collaboration.
It sounds like a stop collaboration.
I'm hearing it.
Yes,
I'm hearing the
We're gonna take two more
We're gonna take
questions.
two more questions, y'all.
Okay.
We're coming to the end of this thing.
So here's one. How are international relations and foreign policy debates influencing local politics?
So we have had several bills that deal with whether or not foreign countries will be able to purchase land in Indiana. And so those are countries that are adversaries to the United States. And so we're wanting to make sure that the land that people are buying up stays with people who support the country. And so that's one thing that we have. But other than that, the trade wars, the tariffs that's going on, that's going to have a significant impact on Indiana. And then the companies that purchase from them. And so those tariffs, it's going to have an impact on the prices that we pay at the grocery stores and just the shopping center. So it has a significant impact.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, this is our final question, right?
And what they would like to know is how many universities does the governor have total control over in Indiana? And it sounds like, okay.
But I don't know. I believe it's one at this point.
You're talking about the IU trustees.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
is the only one. And we did not know that was going to be in the budget bill until like 24 hours before we were going to vote.
Can you speak to that, Bill, for those people who don't know what that is?
So we have to pass a budget every 2 years. And so the budget bill has a lot of stuff in it. And we get the bill about 24 hours before we are eligible to vote on it. And one thing that had not been debated either in committee, wasn't in the conference committee, just really popped up out of the blue, was to take away the rights of the alumni to vote for the trustees on the IU board. And so for Indiana, for our governor, I think that is the only one that we have, because it's not like that for Purdue, it's not like that for Ball State, it's not like that for Indiana State University of Southern Indiana, Vincennes, or Ivy Tech. So they have different ways of getting their trustees, but Indiana is the only one that, to my knowledge, that where the governor just has total control.
And my understanding is that there's some legislation, there is some litigation that's happening around that
Yes,
as well.
some people have filed a lawsuit
Yes, they
about
did.
that. Some
Mhm.
students have filed a lawsuit about the voter ID bill as well.
Okay. So listen, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but we can't be before you all night. So I do want to give our panelists like a minute to go ahead and give some closing remarks. And I have a few, and I'm you got something. Okay, praise God. All right, so we'll start with, because we started over here, we're gonna start over here for our closing remarks.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say that while there are no elections in 2025 this year, 2026 will be a big year. Control of Congress will be on the ballot, as well state legislative races, and a whole host of local offices. As I mentioned earlier, these local races make the day-to-day decisions that will impact you the most. So picking the right people is important if you want to continue to move our community forward. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity to sit at the red table.
All
Come on.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, love it.
Then I have to go after my.
Yes.
So thank you all so much for being there virtually, and thank you all for inviting me to be here. It's been a very engaging conversation. I agree with my county chair. It's all about us. And it's important to hold your elected officials accountable, but you have to play a part as well. And so it's about all of us working together to making sure that we're leaving this place much better than we did when we got here.
Well, thank you. You want me to go? Yeah. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna give out a disclaimer again. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse a political party or a specific set of political beliefs. So you want to do that, and then I'm gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So of course, this is May Week 2025.
Yes.
You were at the Red Table Talk, and it was hot. It was
Yes.
hot. You can't feel it, but the table was hot.
Shaking
And so we had some great conversation. Listen, we are continuing to move forward. Our theme is lifting as we climb the burden of strength. On tomorrow, we're going to be virtual again. So dial in tomorrow. We are going to have a financial empowerment session for women and girls. All right. So this is going to be important. We're going to talk about generational wealth. We're going to talk about how do we pour back into ourselves, our young ladies. And so that's going to be powerful. Then, of course, we're going to have a celebration on the 15th. On Thursday, we're going to be at Light of the World Christian Church with Strength, Power, and Praise concert. All right. So we have Lorette Brown Clark, and we have Lamar Campbell with Spirit of Praise. We still have some tickets available. If you want to be in the building, trust me, we have some special guests that are going to be there. It's going to be fire. We have a Divine Nine choir.
Okay.
Listen, it's getting ready to happen. And then, of course, we're going to be on Friday, the 16th, seeing the Resist exhibit. And so we want you to meet us at the Indiana Historical Society. This looks at the impact of the KKK in Indiana and how some students resisted, all right? And how we can have that kind of power and move that forward. And then on the 17th, we have a caregivers appreciation brunch. So if you're a caregiver of anyone, whether it's Alzheimer's Association, that's our partner, but any type of caregiver for children with special needs, somebody with cancer, this one is for you. We want to make sure we give back. And then last but not least, we're going to have our end of the year youth program celebration, celebrating our youth. That's on Sunday, May the 18th at the Indy Global Village. And we want you to be there. And that's really to highlight our youth. We got to pour into them. We got to let them know how important they are. So we have a whole week of events. Visit our Facebook page, our social media, and of course our website at www.indydeltas.org to see all of the great events we have for May 2025.
Now listen, she gave you the marching orders. You heard a lot of information around this red table. I want to thank our panelists, and that's all of our panelists, right? There was a wealth of knowledge and different perspectives that came through. We know that you took something away. You can drop it in the chat right now. The one thing that you learned, that's teaching me. Drop it in the chat what you learned today and what you still want to know. And so on behalf of our committee, and I don't speak on behalf of the chapter, that's our chapter president for us, but we want to thank you for joining us today at the red table, and we take care and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank y'all for coming. Have a good one.
Yes.
Take everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. I feel like we need a song. We off air. Let me go off.
Are we off
We
air?
officially off air.
I just turned it on.